In this U.S. military analysis, we see that the unseen kills 3:47 a.m., the Iranian highlands. An F-15E Strike Eagle pushes its engines to the brink, pulling a crushing 9G turn to dodge 2 Sayad, 4 missiles closing fast. But right on the edge of the kill box, a warhead detonates just inches from the left engine. An ejection seat distress beacon instantly lit up the satellite comms network just moments. Before the $80 million jet vanished into a massive fireball, while the pilot drops into hostile territory 500 miles away in safe airspace, a sleeping giant just woke up. An encrypted burst just fired from the launch site, packing a devastating digital payload that Tehran never saw coming. Over the next 94 seconds, the global combat landscape would learn a brutal lesson. Tehran's fatal error wasn't downing an American fighter. It was the nightmare they unknowingly dragged right through their front door. 3:50 a.m. screens aboard the Century 11 command plane went totally black. The Eagle 04 tracker wiped from the feed. Inside the E3 AWACS, nobody screamed, just a dead, chilling electronic void. Command knew immediately this was absolutely no random system failure. It was a massive tactical blackout drop straight into the center of the Middle Eastern powder keg. Washington stayed quiet, but that is the silence of a predator pivoting to a brutal tier of combat Tehran cannot survive. 3:55 a.m., Iranian forces smelled blood. Before the smashed Pratt & Whitney engine could cool, swarms of MA-17 choppers launched, dumping Iranian special operators straight into the brutal Zagros Mountains. Their high command thought they had scored a massive victory. They simply punched a Titan and tripped a pre-loaded contingency plan built to erase their forces off the map entirely. 4:02 a.m., operational pressure is pinning the red line. For every second our downed aviators stayed trapped, the threat of a massive international hostage nightmare became real. But let's look at the real battle space. While Iranian troops celebrated, an invisible operation spun up. Deep inside a Black Ops CIA branch, strike orders were instantly signed. Directives completely hidden from any civilian or military tracking grid, the snare wasn't just set. It snapped shut the exact second their first missile cleared the tube. Tehran believes they are the alpha predators here. They are about to discover they are merely pawns playing an adversary already calculating 20 steps ahead. 4:15 a.m. The split-second Eagle 04 flatlined. Pentagon combat rescue modules bypassed planning entirely and slammed straight into execution. Washington wasn't kicking the front door down. They were quietly picking the deadbolt. A flawlessly engineered CIA data ghost was actively dragging Iranian leadership's focus toward the shoreline. Phony distress beacons and scrambled chatter flooded hostile outposts, baiting them into preparing for a massive Navy amphibious extraction out in the Gulf. Textbook military deception right here. While their coastal batteries burn radar scanning for a phantom armada, the actual extraction element is miles ahead, silently piercing the brutal mountain ranges completely undetected. 4:22 a.m. The Night Stalkers of the 161st Regiment are officially on the hunt. 2 MH-60M Blackhawks, absolute marvels of tactical engineering, pull off a terrifying mid-air refuel directly over the border zone. They dock with a Lockheed Martin MC-130J Commando II, a heavy tactical tanker built specifically to operate deep inside denied enemy airspace. It is a high-speed, pitch-black tactical ballet executed just feet off the jagged ridgeline. Tanks full, the choppers kill all outward comms and drop violently into a terrain-masking deck run. They aren't cresting those peaks. They thread through sheer canyons, betting their lives on Raytheon third-generation night vision and forward-looking infrared sensor pods. Those systems literally see the thermal heat of the rocks, turning a total blackout death zone into a glowing extraction highway. 4:28 a.m. A hostile Ababil 3 scout drone, essentially an unblinking thermal eye, blindly sweeps over and tags the burning exhaust heat from our lead Blackhawk. Ground Command instantly realizes the coastal extraction was total bait. They aggressively start screaming across comms to spin the convoys around. The tactical ghost was blown. To break the enemy radar lock, the lead aviator physically slammed his cyclic, ripping the bird into a brutal evasive dive that nearly sheared his main rotors against the cliff. A raw, terrifying split second of pure survival instinct. You and I know that dread. Like hiding in pitch black, feeling totally secure, only to hear the enemy's combat boots stop right outside your door. Tehran thought they had the trap set, but the Night Stalkers were already inside the perimeter. 4:35 a.m. As the Blackhawks slowed to a hover, kicking up a thick cloud of Zagros dust, those SEAL Team 6 operators prepared to fast rope right into the objective. In any U.S. military analysis, this is the most vulnerable tactical phase, and that is exactly when the Iranians sprung their hidden trap. Rolling straight out of a reinforced cave was a Russian-built Tor M1 system, known to NATO as the SA-15 Gauntlet. Understand this, it was not just a standard missile launcher, it was a high-tech executioner cleverly camouflaged as a civilian truck. The Tor M1 system did not hesitate. Its search radar acquired and locked those low-flying Blackhawks in a fraction of a second. 2 9M331 missiles launched from vertical tubes, carving bright white streaks of fire through the night. The Night Stalkers countered with a massive spread of flares and decoys, but that Tor M1 proximity fuse is absolutely unforgiving. They managed to spoof the first missile, but the second one detonated directly above the main rotor shaft of the lead Blackhawk. It did not even need a direct hit. The blast shockwave and thousands of tungsten fragments shredded the helicopter's vital hydraulic lines like they were cheap wet paper. 4:42 a.m. The tactical picture had totally collapsed. The elite rescue unit was now the force in need of a rescue. That lead Blackhawk became a twisted heap of metal, leaving the SEALs pinned down behind the smoking, shattered fuselage. IRGC ground forces, eager for a high-profile kill, started swarming over the rugged mountain ridges from 3 different directions. We monitored Tehran celebrating on their comms. We have got the whole lot, the pilot and the rescue team. Let's track the timeline here. In exactly 7 minutes, a massive wave of Iranian infantry would completely overrun the American operators. This was no longer a structured mission. It was a brutal fight for survival deep inside hostile territory. 4:43 a.m. As those IRGC ground forces advanced, they were about to face a harsh lesson in American multi-domain dominance. Without warning, every single Iranian radio frequency collapsed into a deafening, piercing screech. That is the electronic scream of an EA-18G Growler. Loitering near the battlespace edge, the Growler's ALQ-99 jammers saturated the spectrum, totally blinding the Tor M1 system's electronic warfare capabilities. On the Iranian radar scopes, the American task force did not just disappear, they instantly multiplied. Dozens of phantom radar tracks swarmed their displays. Some flew backward, while others spawned right inside the Iranian command bunker. This was not just standard jamming, it was a digital hallucination. While Iranian commanders wrestled with those ghosts, the military's ultimate Overwatch asset entered the battlespace. High above the chaos, a squadron of F-35C Lightning IIs loitered in absolute stealth mode. The F-35C was not dogfighting. It served as an absolute forward sensor god using its AESA radar. The jet mapped every IRGC movement via high-resolution infrared, locking the exact GPS coordinates of that Tor M1. This tactical data was not whispered. It was blasted across the Link 16 network straight to a heavy bomber loitering 500 miles away. 4:45 a.m., while the SEALs were still hanging on those ropes. B-52H Stratofortress launched a salvo of JASSM-ER cruise missiles from standoff range. These are $1.3 million stealth killers. Mid-flight, the F-35C executed a dynamic target redesignation maneuver. Via Link 16, the fighter established a digital handshake with the incoming JASSM-ER missiles, feeding them the fresh coordinates of the newly exposed Tor M1. It was an absolute masterclass in synchronized kinetic destruction. Just 1 second prior, that IRGC commander was leaning out of his vehicle, barking orders at his charging infantry. The very next second, a silent, radar-invisible JASSM-ER slammed straight into the Tor M1 with surgical precision. The detonation threw up a massive orange pillar, completely vaporizing the SA-15 gauntlet and everything else inside a 50-meter kill radius. That 7-minute operational clock was just reset by a weapon fired before the Iranians even realized a war had started. Let's be real. It is like standing in a boxing ring and getting dropped by a punch your opponent threw yesterday. 4:48 a.m. Right as the second Night Stalker chopper hoisted the final SEAL operator out of the Zagros Mountains. Tehran played its final tactical card. 12 miles away, the Bavar 373 Air Defense Network, Iran's own version of the S-300, suddenly powered up. Telemetry shows the Mirage 4 radar scanning through the jamming, locking onto our hovering Blackhawk. 2 Mach 6 Syed 4 interceptors erupted from vertical launch tubes, accelerating fast toward the rescue team. 4:50 a.m. The Growler. The pilot spiked power to the jamming pod. Jammer at 110%, a massive electromagnetic wall. Blinded by that intense energy spike, the first Syed 4 lost track and slammed harmlessly into the hillside. But the second missile switched to home on jam mode. It rode the Growler's signal back, exceeding 6,400 kilometers an hour. 4:52 a.m. Through a Link 16 handshake, the pilot guided the final cruise missile. It launched 40 minutes ago, heading straight for the heart of that Mirage radar. The F-35C sent continuous updates to the stealth missile. Seconds before the Syed 4 could shred the Blackhawk, our cruise missile completely obliterated the Bavar 373 radar array. The data link was fully severed. No guidance signals left. That Mach 6 interceptor became a blind hunk of metal. It skimmed just meters past the Blackhawk's rotors before exploding harmlessly against a mountain peak. 4:55 a.m. As the final Night Stalker cleared the mountains with our survivors, a B-52 Stratofortress cruised through the stratosphere. It never even crossed into Iranian airspace. It didn't need stealth because we had just blinded every eye the enemy possessed. Looking at this through the lens of U.S. military analysis, Tehran's air defense was dismantled by computer protocols and a strike from another time zone. A total tactical success by 5:15 a.m. With their air defense network fully blinded, the remaining cruise missiles caught their final handshake from the F-35C. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It became a strike to gut the IRGC infrastructure. Those stealth missiles streaked toward their final marks, the hardened aircraft shelters and the regional drone command. They punched through reinforced concrete like paper. Internal detonations reduced Tehran's forward fighter fleet and their drone army to flaming piles of scrap metal. 5:30 a.m., Tehran just lost its two most valuable mobile air defense systems, the Tor and Bavar platforms. Humiliated and completely outgunned, the IRGC ground forces retreated. They abandoned the hunt for pilots who had already safely crossed the border. By sunrise, Iranian state media pushed out a face-saving statement, claiming a military exercise was successfully completed. But the still smoldering ruins of their radar stations told a completely different story. You and I both know this wasn't an exercise. It was a tactical failure and a costly lesson for Iran in modern warfare. Never assume you can hunt American pilots without getting outmaneuvered by an integrated intelligence network like a child. While Tehran tallied up the massive damage for the U.S. military, it was simply another Tuesday. Let's look at the economic reality. A bold rescue operation traded one downed aircraft for the complete exposure and total annihilation of Iran's strategic air defense network. Even top hedge fund managers on Wall Street would envy that 30,000% return, a return derived from their utter humiliation. A massive message was just stamped and delivered directly to Tehran's high command. They might choose to stay silent, but those radar screens cannot lie. Never test the patience of a giant who can deliver a deadly software strike before you finish your lunch.